we've got the guy beside the green, Danny. Danny and myself, Kamal Sanaga, we both are at TD. Susan's a staff lawyer, of course. Mike is at Muscle. Paul Kent, we'll talk about it in the next slide. But we really appreciate you guys coming out today. There's a lot of content. We've got all the Atlassian speaker panel today, so you're going to have a lot of good information coming in today. Sorry? Yeah, thank you guys. You can just
go ahead and right here. The hell out of here.
Thank you, Manny. I said thank you.
Fine. I know where I'm going.
Just so you know, guys, there's a link right here. It's atlassian.com/Toronto. Exciting news. When you do apply, when you go and become a member here or apply to that, make sure you actually put in that you want to add yourself to the mailing list. So every time we publish something, you guys get that. Right? Number 2, upcoming events. Tomorrow, first time ever, Peel Regional August. So if you guys are closer to Peel Regional or are interested, Pulkit, where are you? Pulkit's the leader that started that. I will be helping him out as well as a co-leader, so that's going to happen tomorrow. The talks are going to be exactly the same this time around. They may be different in the future, depends on how we kind of measure it. And then for Toronto, the next event is October 1st.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
September 30th.
Yeah, and it's here.
And it's here.
So the day before, because it wasn't available on the 1st.
And it was.
Sorry for those of you who already signed up, but it's going to be the Monday, September 30th, and it's going to be here. And we're going to learn how to not break Jira with workflows or with scripts. 2 talks.
2 talks. Thank you. Breaking news. Exciting stuff today. We've got, like I mentioned, a few people from Atlassian. Probably heard of the company. And I've got some information about them that I kind of collected before we started our. So I'm going to start off with Mike McGreevy. Mike, can you come up with this for a second? So he has been working with Atlassian toolset since 2011. He convinced his former organization to replace Bugzilla. You've heard of it? Yeah. With Jira. By de facto, by de facto, he became the admin of the product. So I don't know if you shoot yourself in the foot with that, or you guys are awesome. He has an interesting fact. He has a collection of over 200 board games. 200 board games. He also is an organizer of another local user group where they meet up and play board games at a bar.
Play some board games at a bar every Thursday night.
Every Thursday night. He has participated in theater throughout his high school and college, and he's an actor, director, producer, playwright, and was managing director of his college theater group in his senior year. Yes. So, welcome, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Please sit.
Okay.
We'll walk away. Eric, anywhere here close by? Eric, there he is. Hey, Eric. So, Eric, he worked as a support engineer at Atlassian for over 2 years before leaving to go to work for another client as an admin. That lasted about 5 months, right, Eric?
What's up?
Your client admin.
Oh, about a year.
About a year. He's an avid reader of things fiction and tends to juggle about 3 or 4 books. I can't even juggle as a paragraph. Every time he moves, he has to downsize his physical collection of books, so that's a lot. You put them in a storage unit.
No, I just sell them for like 10 cents.
Wicked. He's also a big fan of strategy games, not as close to his collection as Mike McGreevy's. But he enjoys that and he's inspired. You can catch up to Mike when it comes to that. So we're looking forward to that. By the way, Mike McGreevy is from Central Illinois, actually. Eric's from Austin, Texas. And well, welcome, thank you. Selena, where are you? So we've got Selena. She is the senior community manager from Atlassian. She used to work with, sorry?
Like, not standing like that.
She used to work with a Toronto startup, and that's how she became involved in the community space. She was a 6th grade science teacher, and she did that for 3 years, and she actually helped out high-risk kids that she still considers their own, so that's awesome, perfect teacher. Atlassian has been home for her for 3.5 years now, and was introduced to their products at her startup days in Toronto, right? The smile that lights up Austin, Texas. Selena. Selena's going to be speaking first, so I'll ask the gentleman to have a seat. And Selena,
All right, well, I can't really beat that intro. I'm Selena. Again, I've been with Atlassian for 3.5 years. I had the privilege of working with this wonderful community. We initially started out as a power of 2, and now we have 8 in our team, and we continue to grow, as does our community. You have had the privilege of working with 4, and now 5 wonderful leaders. First and foremost, I'd love to give them a round of applause for all the work that they do in order to get you all together. So if we can do that today and right now. So just for emphasis, these 5 individuals are volunteers. They don't get paid. They do this because they actually truly are invested in our products. They truly believe in what community stands for at Atlassian. And more importantly, they really care about how they're giving back to you all. To be honest, a lot of them show up not only here, but they show up behind the scenes. They're constantly thinking of content that will be relevant to you all. And I will tell you, if you want an advocate when it comes to product feedback and it coming back to us, those are your people. Because we hear about it. We're the liaison. I'm a liaison. That's how I pretty much describe my role to my family, because when I tell them that I'm a community manager, they're like apartments? I'm like, no, not apartments. So just to kind of give you some context around the overall, the ecosystem that we call Atlassian community and how it's evolved to what it is today. As y'all know, we have, and I'll skip over all of that, but we have 2, actually 3, which I'll get into a little bit later, but 2 main channels for community. We have an online space, and then again your in-person space where you all get to gather and have that face-to-face time. So with that, you already know our community events. By show of hands, how many of you are attending for the first time? Wow, very cool. So I'm going to come and ask every one of you why you decided to come today. But anyone, just show of hands one more time, first timers. So all veteran members, that's an opportunity for y'all to connect and for newbies to connect with veteran members, because again, this is an opportunity to connect with one another, share best practices, and truly understand how our products can help you maximize your role at work, establish a more team-based mentality when it comes to Jira, Confluence, Trello, whatever product you're using. For us, the whole purpose behind community is it was established organically. People started meeting just like this and realized it was a real opportunity to understand how to leverage our products in a more fulfilling way. So again, you already have seen this, but for newbies, this is more directed to you. We have really great content that, again, our leaders are truly invested in. They're constantly trying to figure out and have a pulse on what it is that you're looking for, what are some pain points that you're dealing with, and then coming to us and also saying, hey, based on the content repository that y'all have, we're actually looking for X, Y, and Z, and we start having conversations with our product teams to make sure that we can actually provide you with enablement resources and also start thinking about this in a much more long-term basis. So, a little bit, I'm going to jump into the space that maybe some of you haven't gotten into yet, but is available 24/7. So, just by show of hands, how many of you have actually jumped into our online community? Okay, cool. How many of you have actually found it successful or like beneficial? Not successful. Let's go beneficial. Fantastic. So, cool thing is that the online community provides a space for you to ask questions, to answer questions, to write articles, to just find content that's relevant to wherever you are in this journey with Atlassian. With that said, I'm going to prompt you to do something really quick because I know most of you have your phones on you. So just by show of hands, let me see how many of you have your phones out right now. Because you're taking really good, valuable notes at the moment, right? No? Okay. So I'm going to have you all take out your phones. Again, these are just certain things that you can expect. With any online community, we are a force behind. There's a force behind the scenes that y'all don't see. We have support engineers, and our leaders that you see here, a lot of them are actually answering a lot of the questions. So we have community leaders both in person and online. If you're interested in being one of these leaders, come talk to me and I'll tell you what the perks and rewards are. If not, you can actually talk to your fellow leaders to just understand a little bit of what we provide. Peel region is about to hit off, and I'm sure they would love some additional help, but they've got 2 forces already that are ready to hit the ground running, plus a support group that's just going to be phenomenal. So if you're interested, come talk to me. So here's your prompt, and there's a reward. So, of course there is. So go ahead and just type in community.atlassian.com. And if you're looking at your Instagram, no one's going to judge, it's fine. As long as I get to see that y'all are on your phones.
That's not making any sense, but you're out.
I'm with adults. Okay, so once you get on there, I'm going to have you go into the search bar. And I want you to check out the Welcome Center, which I'm sure probably some of you didn't even know existed. This Welcome Center is a phenomenal place for you to try out. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up for us. It should look a little bit like this. My actual wants to work. Let's just pretend that we know what's happening here. There we go. So the Welcome Center provides an overview of what community is on the online side or the online channel. There's a lot of really great opportunities. It tells you with the voice and tone, some really cool opportunities to meet with some of our leaders that are actually driving engagement. And again, just an opportunity for you to answer any questions, ask any questions, or just gain some information that you're probably already asking within your role or in other areas. Okay, cool. Welcome Center. Second thing, I want you to go ahead and put in the search for Toronto User Group. And it should look like this. So last year we launched an opportunity for our user groups to connect online. We understood that, hey, it's great that you get to connect once a month, but what about in between? What if I want to actually, I missed a meeting, I didn't have an opportunity to connect with a presenter, or I have questions regarding the overall event. This is a chance to not only connect, but also ask those questions that maybe you weren't able to or felt uncomfortable at the actual event. And your leaders are on there and they're just kind of moderating, trying to figure out what's going on. And the cool thing is, we also highlight what's going on for your in-person events here on this side. It's a very collaborative space. It closes a communication loop and allows you to stay connected 24/7. So now that you're all sold on community, everyone should be involved in some form or fashion, right? Cool. So one more task. I have swag codes. How many of you like swag? Maybe. Okay. Well, the Atlassian swag store, not what you always get here, but the Atlassian swag store has a lot of other swag opportunities. So I'm going to challenge the first 5 people that answer a question or ask a question. You'll get a $50 swag code. $50 will get you a hoodie. It'll get you pretty much things that my leaders are probably like, what? But go ahead, and the first 5 people that can show me that they either asked a question by the end of this event, you don't have to do it right now. By the end of this event, if you can show me that you answered a question or asked a question, I'll give you that $50 swag code. Sound
I just
good?
answered 2.
I'm sorry?
I just answered 2.
Okay. You get like exclusive swag. That's- But we don't joke around. We always make jokes that Atlassian is a t-shirt company that makes software. So we really put a lot of money into our swag. With that said, I'm going to jump back over and give you guys an opportunity to just think through. There it is. See, I'm holding myself accountable. It's not 20, it's 50. So, with that said, there's one other element to community that we offer. How many of you have the task of trying to promote a line of governance around how products are used within your org, trying to promote product adoption, trying to teach best practices within your teams? Pretty much everyone in this room, right? Yeah. One of the things that we launched were company user groups. So these are internal user groups that you can actually drive and we support at Atlassian. We provide sponsorship, swag, and content. So just to kind of give you an idea, we have over 100 companies that have established internal user groups. And the reason being is because they realize that there is an absolute need to have these conversations, but more importantly, it's executive buy-in. They're like, well, why are we having these? How is this going to help maximize our efforts? And what is so valuable about running these meetups? All of a sudden you add that Atlassian is sponsoring these and providing you valuable content, and you get that much more of a return. So just a few things on why company user groups are actually beneficial. And then the resources provided, we give you all of these wonderful things. You are considered a community leader, which then has its perks and recognition that we are now evolving, because before it was very kind of like, thank you so much for doing what you're doing, but now it's like, thank you so much for doing what you're doing, and here are all the perks and certifications that you get along with that. We offer free certifications, which of course helps build your career trajectory, and that's the hardest word to say on a regular basis. But either way, we offer a lot of really good incentives that help maximize your overall role within your organization. We also have an online group that's dedicated to all of our company user group organizers, so that way they can connect and share best practices. Plus, we have a Slack channel that you get to hang out with these guys over here and connect with them individually as well. And you get a lot of support from them. It's almost like another support channel versus going through Atlassian support. So right now we actually have 115 now onboarded companies. These are a few of them. So I'm sure you see a lot of them that have been working or pretty much the same as you are, or maybe one of these is your company. Hopefully you see them. But either way, we understand that it's generally around distributed companies that are having these pain points. So if you're interested in starting a company user group, being a community leader, or helping one of our wonderful communities, please let me know. I'm here to have these conversations, provide you with more insight on how you can be proactive. And to leave you with this, it's a Cisco and the impact that their company user group made. So, yeah. And that's it. Any questions? Everyone's happy about community, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to the people that you actually came to see. And, oh, thanks, guys.
right, looking good there. Hello everybody, thank you for having us. Again, my name is Mike McGreevy. I am a technical account manager with Atlassian, which means that I manage the strategic relationship between Atlassian and a number of our largest enterprise customers, where I serve as both a strategic advisor to these customers on the operation and use of the Atlassian platform, as well as an advocate to enterprise needs internal to Atlassian. I'm joined by my colleague Eric Franklin, also on the technical account management team. And today we're going to be talking about DevOps. Specifically, we're going to be looking at the state of software today and how DevOps addresses some of the biggest challenges facing the industry. We'll then take a look at the steps that you and your team and your organizations can take to start doing DevOps in your day-to-day work or improving how you're doing DevOps. And finally, we'll take a look at how Atlassian does DevOps and what we can do to help you on your journey to DevOps transformation. If you look at a cross-section of industry today, you'll see that there are a number of companies with products ranging from high-end electric cars to cups of coffee and bottles of laundry detergents. And you might not think that these companies would consider themselves as software companies, but they are increasingly just that. New high-end electric cars, for example, are being produced with over 10 million lines of code each. And when you get your morning cup of coffee from Starbucks, you may not realize, but that cup of coffee was programmed and heated up to the exact temperature as required by the specifications that were automatically programmed into the device that produced that coffee without the baristas having to do anything. So the learning curve on producing your breakfast sandwich and your breakfast beverages is essentially eliminated. And that's all through the power of software. Now, in order to do these cool things with software, be it how your automotive engine runs to how your cup of coffee is heated up to the exact precise temperature, software teams have had to change the way they work. Several years ago, teams started using new practices such as Agile and Git. In Agile, all roles on a development team come together to collaborate and work together to produce software. And with Git, branching and merging has never been easier. This allows teams to deliver faster and with higher quality. But if you look at where we're at today, it's increasingly obvious that Agile and Git are becoming the new normal. For example, in 2016, Atlassian surveyed over 17,000 software professionals, including over 1,300 Atlassian customers. The results of which are that 77% of teams self-reported as using Agile methodologies. And 78% of teams were using distributed version control systems such as Git. Now this pattern holds consistent regardless of the size of the software teams pulled. So from small teams to large teams within enterprises and teams of teams within enterprises. So Agile and Git are great, they're in use, and they've started to come into widespread adoption. So the question is there an opportunity to improve even further beyond what these practices offer us? So I'd like to do a quick poll of the room. How many folks in the room are using Agile and or Git processes in your everyday life? Raise your hand. Keep your hands in the air for just a second, if you will. How many of you are using Agile and Git and are also having some of these problems? Maybe you've noticed that releases are slipping, that there's been friction between your development and your operations teams. You feel that incident response times are breaching their SLAs. Infrastructure has often been on fire. If you answer yes to all of these, then it's clear that Agile and Git aren't that silver bullet that we were hoping for, right? There's still this wall of confusion that can build up within an organization and across teams that still prevents you from delivering software effectively. That's because traditional development and operations teams tend to work in silos, limiting the amount of inter-team communication and collaboration right until it's time to release. Now, these processes don't encourage software teams to communicate with people outside their immediate software bubble.
and it doesn't prevent teams operations teams from being woken up at 2 a.m. to have to deal with some fire that they have zero context about. So while Agile and Git are certainly good prerequisites to a culture for DevOps, there's a lot more to building a culture that allows for cross-functional teams to maximize their efficiency, to collaborate, and to innovate. So the only way to break down silos, to open up some of these lines of communication, and to make further gains on speed and quality is through a new way of working. We're not just talking about tools. We're not talking about Jira, we're not talking about Confluence, but also best practices and a cultural shift to experiment and to share information between teams. And that's the catalyst that we use for this movement called DevOps. Now, how many folks in the room are very familiar with what DevOps is? How many folks in the room have heard the term and kind of have a decent idea? All right, so there's a good range. So let's level set just a little bit. At Atlassian, we define DevOps as a culture where development and operations collaborate to build a faster, more reliable release pipeline. Now, this will often manifest with changes to the software delivery pipeline and the processes used to develop software and the supporting infrastructure. When it is about that culture element, DevOps is underpinned by 3 core principles. So the first is workflow, specifically making your work transparent and visible across groups that are working on any given work item. You want to resist the urge to blindly take a piece of work and throw it over the wall to the next team in the process. You want to make your workflow open and transparent, so let everybody see what's happening all throughout the process, and not just what's coming in and what's going out of your own siloed team. This open workflow allows for a greater feedback loop on the process as it's implemented. And that feedback is amplified because it's not just seen by your immediate team, but everyone end-to-end on that software delivery spectrum. And so quality, as a result, is built in rather than tested out, because errors that arise early in the process are highlighted and made visible to all throughout that process, and everyone's able to swarm on that because there's that higher level of visibility. This also allows for a culture of continuous experimentation. Because we're constantly providing feedback on the process and improving the workflow as we do it, and we're learning from failures quickly and as soon as they arise, we're building a culture of learning where it's safe to experiment, to try something new in a process, to implement a change without fear of failure. Because if you fail early in the process and identify that, it's not as big of a deal. We want to encourage this culture of experimentation, of implementing changes and trying to fail quickly if those changes aren't the best course of action. Get quick feedback on those changes, and when they're successful, replicate them out and reproduce them. Now, DevOps is not something that one can implement overnight. It's going to take a little bit of time. It's going to be a journey. It also takes a team. So it's not something that's going to be implemented by the individual with the title DevOps engineer. It's going to be implemented by everybody within that software organization. It's also a complete cultural shift. So it's a targeted decision to be more transparent, to be more understanding, and to be more cooperative. Now, if you can get there, though, DevOps helps to improve team efficiency, operational quality, and results in more satisfied customers, and hopefully more satisfied employees implementing the process as well. But we've actually seen that there is a strong correlation between teams that are practicing DevOps and teams that are delivering value. These teams are spending more of their time on R&D and less of their time on rework and unplanned work. These teams are also recovering faster from failures when they do occur because failures are transparent, and there's more folks in the process who can swarm to resolve that failure. These teams are also ultimately deploying more frequently and at higher quality with each subsequent deployment. As dev and ops teams free themselves from downtime and rework, they have a lot more time on their hands to invest in things like proactive quality measures and achieving greater business results. Teams with this free time can now experiment, can learn from successes and roll out successful experiments into new markets. With additional free time, we can do some experimental development work, develop a new feature. If it's successful, that's an excellent way that we can attain new markets. We can also invest in future quality by automating quality assurance and testing activities. If you're so bogged down in doing rework that you don't have time to take the simple stuff and make it more efficient, it's just going to compound itself over time. If you free up that time by eliminating the rework, by building in your communication and development practices, you can start to improve your process even further by automating key components of it. And ultimately that means faster time to market for your organization. Using the time recovered from excess work and downtime can be used to develop new products, features, and implement new process improvements, ultimately leading to a point where you're delivering software faster to your customers. And so when you look at companies like Netflix, which are doing up to 100 releases per day, which is pretty astounding, they are frequently mentioned when it comes to DevOps. Now, when you look at Netflix, it's important to remember two things. So the first is, you may not be striving to do 100 releases per day. If you are, I would love to talk to you because that's really cool. But the second thing to remember is that this didn't happen overnight. It wasn't just a presentation that somebody learned about DevOps and then made a complete shift. It's a journey. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of time. That being said, there are some tangible steps that you can take to push yourselves further along your own DevOps journey. So, we are going to dive into some of those tangible steps that you can take to get you on your path to implementing DevOps or improving how you do DevOps within your organizations. Atlassian is the culture and collaboration layer of DevOps. We put teams first, and we provide tools and we provide guidance to successfully implement DevOps practices. So we're going to dive into the steps that you can take to go DevOps with Atlassian. And there are three core steps. To start, first is culture. So a core ingredient for successful implementation of DevOps. Practices follow next. Once you've established a culture that is conducive to DevOps, that is open and collaborative, it's essential to put in place tangible methods in place that allow this collaboration to thrive. And finally, by having the right tools at your disposal, you can help to speed up your releases and to automate some of these tasks that come as part of your practices and your processes. So we're going to dive in a little bit to each of these dimensions of steps to DevOps, starting with culture. Culture is the foundation on which every successful team is built. Culture should foster experimentation and encourage transparency. Your team should feel comfortable approaching one another with problems, not afraid to approach one another with problems. Incidents should lead to learning and not lead to finger pointing. So, in order to build, you want to start taking steps as an organization to build this culture of collaboration. You want to be open and transparent in order to effectively communicate with each other. But this is hard, right? We don't actually do this. So if you know that the team you're working on, the teams you're working with, exhibit some dysfunction, we don't have a shared responsibility, we're not transparent, we don't effectively communicate, what are your options? Where do you go to begin this cultural shift so that we can be more open with each other? One small but impactful way to initiate culture change is to run workshops within your organization that identify areas that you can improve amongst your various development and operations teams. We do this a lot at Atlassian. We do it so much that we actually decided to write down what we do, make it public. We threw it up on the internet, www.atlassian.com/team-playbook. This is what we call the Atlassian Team Playbook. It's a guide designed to help teams work better together. You can check it out. Go to that link now, go to that link later, at your leisure. It's totally free to download and to use. Now, this is a set of books that contain best practices, as well as ways to check the health of every one of your teams. So the playbook consists of health monitors used to identify areas of improvement based on your type of team. So this is used for operations teams, used for project teams, used for service teams, leadership teams. For example, one of the dimensions that we look at in Health Monitor is our responsibilities of team members balanced across the team. Another one we look at is, does everybody on the team have a shared understanding of what we are trying to accomplish together? And through each of these dimensions, as a team, you'll rate yourself. And you'll do it on a 3-point scale. You'll be from healthy to a bit sick to quite unwell. And you'll rate yourselves and identify areas where we need to improve. And once you've identified a particular area for improvement as a team, you'll move on to a series of recommended plays, which are activities that you can run to help try to address that sickness or that dysfunction. So for example, if you find that as a team, you're running into the same problems over and over and over again every time you do a release, you might choose to implement the retrospective play, or the incident post-mortem every time an incident occurs. And these are plays that detail what you need, who you need, and how to walk through the activities to get to some potential fixes to some of these maladies that you come across within a team. So running regular health monitors with your team to both identify areas of weakness and then to implement plays to improve against those areas helps your team move towards a culture that is ready for DevOps. Now currently the health book is organized by team type, so when you go to this site you can select the team that you're at. Again, leaders, service, project teams, whatever. And you can run plays on a regular basis. So I encourage you all to check out the playbook. And if you have any questions, we're going to be around after this to talk more about that. But let's move on to the next step in this process. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague here, Eric, to dive into practices.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
As Mike was saying, my name is Eric Franklin. I'm a TAM as well. So going off of what Mike was saying, jumping into practices, these are actually things that we take to a lot of our clients to empower them and to make them stronger with DevOps. So I love talking about this stuff. So let's dive in. On a practices side, we have 3 tangible practices, ways in which we work in DevOps. Those would be Agile, Git, so DDCS, and then continuous delivery. Show of hands, how many people again use Agile in here? 77%, exactly. Cool. Yeah, the first practice that we preach a lot at Atlassian and we use as Atlassians on the daily is Agile. We believe at Atlassian that you cannot be DevOps without Agile methodology, and you cannot be, when I say DevOps without Agile, you can't be Agile without DevOps either. And then why is that? So, Agile allows for incremental delivery of software development, fast feedback loops. It allows for quick response to change. It allows for teams to deliver as fast as possible and to be able to adapt to any changes or unexpected things that come in. Going off of that, we also actually have a microsite. I know you can tell by the team playbook, but Atlassian kind of has a website for everything that we want to share. So pretty much any methodology that we use, we're cocky about it at Atlassian, and we actually have a website to talk about it. So if you're more interested in diving into how Atlassian does Agile methodology, Atlassian.com/agile should be pretty easy to remember. Moving right along over to Git. This practice, while we wouldn't consider it essential to DevOps, it's not a blocker per se, it's still really important. It lines up pretty much with Agile in the extent that it allows teams to move quicker. It allows for quick iterations throughout the software development lifecycle. It allows for us to be adaptive and reactive to change as quickly as possible. So again, I mean, while it's not as essential as Agile, I would say it's still very important. And then diving into it, we also have a micro site on that as well, Atlassian.com/Git. Show of hands, how many people use Git? 78%. Yeah, that's what I thought. Cool. And then lastly, going over to the last practice that we use is continuous delivery. This one's an especially important one. It's been important in my career for quite a while because when I wasn't working at Atlassian, I actually was on SRE and VRE teams. So a lot of what we did as those teams was we automated what people didn't need to be doing. What we realized in a lot of those teams was a lot of what people were doing were actually slowing us down from innovating as a company. It was keeping us chugging along and fixing issues that a lot of the times we didn't need to have our hands in. So going into continuous delivery, the main idea of that practice there is to automate what people don't need to actually be involved in. That can go into automated testings, automated code releases, just really anything that don't need people to babysit it 24/7, so to speak. And when you dive in more to continuous delivery, continuous integration, it actually allows your team to work a lot faster on the things that are more important to your team, as opposed to just random workaround things that you don't really need to be doing. And we have a microsite on this too, Atlassian.com/continuous delivery. So if you want to learn more about that, again, how Atlassian runs through these practices, I definitely recommend going to that. Whether you're a novice with continuous delivery or honestly even if you're a professional, because Atlassian does it like best, I would say. Cool. And diving into the last column, the last steps to DevOps, and I do want to mention these are not meant to be worked one after the other. You don't have to develop your entire company culture around DevOps prior to even talking about practices. And you don't have to choose all of your tools at the very end. This is all meant to be done concurrently and back and forth. And it's honestly just like DevOps itself. It's a continuous process. It's something that's going to continue to change over time. So I do want to emphasize that. But going into tools, DevOps the Atlassian way. It's almost like we make tools around a lot of these processes. So we have this infinity loop that we like to highlight. The reason we like to highlight this is it actually goes through the way we look at software development life cycles, which are phases that are flowing together. They're continuous. They go back in on themselves, and it's an infinite process of software development. Ideally, these ways in which we do DevOps are meant to break down the silos that Mike had mentioned earlier. It's meant to keep key stakeholders informed. So you're using not only the tools to release code and develop it, but you're also communicating all of these changes to your users and your stakeholders. So I want to journey through this loop real quick with you guys. If it's a little redundant, you'll have to forgive me, but I think it really highlights how Atlassian does DevOps with our own tooling. So going through planning, right at the very beginning, you can see Confluence. It's a fantastic tool to be able to leave customer feedback, actual requirements that your team wants to take forward, and then user stories, just anything that you're going to actually get started on in the software development life cycle. And then you can actually take all of those user stories and put them in Jira as stories and epics, tasks, and you can track them throughout the entire life cycle in Jira software. And then going down to build, you can use Jira software actually integrated with Bitbucket to be able to pull requests directly from Jira over to Bitbucket throughout building the code. And then down to continuous integration, you can tie these automated builds, tests, pretty much everything, linking it over into the Jira Software Hub, and then diving over into deploying and operating. After the code is deployed, going into the operational stages of this, that's actually something I like to dive into a lot with my clients because a lot of my clients are not actually software developers. They're actually on the operate side, so there are a lot of operational teams. And the practices around DevOps that I see can get muddied really quickly are in the operate stage. The reason I point this out is what I do point a lot of our clients to. I know I work at Atlassian, so it's biased, but Jira Service Desk is a fantastic tool to be able to take that feedback during the operational life cycle and to be able to react to those changes really quickly. So if you have an incident with the software that you're supporting, or if you're taking any feedback for future changes, Jira Service Desk is just, it's the simplest damn tool on the market to be able to use for taking in most everything.
Can I ask, why is Trello not on here?
That's actually a really good question, and we talked about putting it on here. We put it on the next slide. I'll tell you why. It's a fantastic question, though. But yeah, Jira Service Desk, again, it's a great tool to be able to take in those feature requests, any emergency incidents. It's what we use internally. Confluence on the operate side is a great place to actually change the DevOps cultural side. So again, going to where these things kind of work concurrently with each other. Confluence is kind of where I point my customers to go and write knowledge base articles, workarounds, anything that on the operational side, when emergency issues arise, it kind of removes some of the human error in the thought of it. They can go right to Confluence first and start looking for knowledge base articles, workarounds, anything like that. And it actually allows for the customer to do that as well. So it becomes a pretty important tool there. And then on the operate side as well, status page, that's a tool that fits right in now. Specifically, it allows you to be able to communicate not only day-to-day changes, like if you're breaking down any software to be able to implement changes, but it also allows you to communicate any massive outages, any headaches that a customer might experience. You'll notice the way this loop goes, it goes right back into continuous feedback. So that's the feedback you're going to be getting from your end users, your stakeholders, customers, and again, you can use Jira Service Desk for that. And it goes right back into the planning phase. So once you have all of that information, that feedback from the operational and continuous feedback stage, it starts right over again. And all of these tools are implemented and integrated to work well together to be able to do DevOps properly. So why wasn't Trello on the previous slide? It's actually a really good question. I think it's mainly because it was on this slide already, and we didn't move it back. But Trello is one of the fantastic tools that Atlassian now owns that you can use throughout this continuous life cycle of software and DevOps. You'll notice actually a few tools on here, Trello and Opsgenie specifically, that Atlassian now owns and supports, but those fit well in together as well. One thing I want to highlight about this right here is even though these are not Atlassian tools, they can still help get you to the proper DevOps culture, and they can help implement that change in your company. Atlassian tools, we kind of like to think they'll get you about 70-80% of the way there, but a lot of these tools will help get you 100% of the way there. And we actually, this isn't on the slide, we actually have a website you can go directly to that will allow you to sift through our humongous marketplace of add-ons and be able to get add-ons specific to helping you implement DevOps in your company. I can get that afterwards at the little Q&A breakup sessions, but just so you have it at atlassian.com/software/marketplace/DevOps. So I can write that down for anybody afterwards if you'd like. But diving into this, what we wanted to highlight at the end of this presentation was an actual example of teams using DevOps the Atlassian way to be able to run through and swarm an emergency issue and come out the other end of it successful and still friends, ideally. Incidents can really ruin a friendship. So diving right in, the first start of it, an incident occurs. You have Sam, this ops engineer. They get pinged through Slack, and I'm going to be honest, the slide you said head chat, it breaks my heart every time that we pull it up. But you get notified via Slack, via an integration with Opsgenie into Slack. Opsgenie pings them and alerts them and says, hey, the application you support is having an issue. You need to jump right into it. So Sam heads in, has their coffee, unless it's like 4 in the morning when this came in. Oh, no, 6 p.m. Okay, so they're having coffee. They're up all night, but they get the incident in, and the first thing they do is they jump over the service desk. Why jump over the service desk? Instant visibility. They open up this ticket with the team that's going to need to solve this issue. The ticket goes right over into a Slack page, and Sally, our developer over here, gets notified. You can set up Slack alerts to notify you whenever tickets come in via Jira. You can also set up things via ops streaming. Regardless, Sam jumps right in, and the first response is to go ahead and get the appropriate teams involved. So after that, the swarming of the issue begins. And in my last job, a lot of my job was emergency response issues to issues that would start losing the company money really quickly. And I can say we used an almost exact model of this every time, and it works. It saves money, it saves time, it saves friendships. I know I mentioned that, but that's important to me. So as I'm going through this example like sets to my core. It's something I've done hundreds of times. But diving right in, the swarming begins. So the ops team is now working with the dev team that they've involved via Jira Service Desk to find a solution to this issue. The way this swarming is happening is you have two things kind of going on at once. The first thing is you have your ops team, Sam over in ops, reaching out to status page to notify all of the users that there's degraded service. And then on the other side of it, you have Sam and the team going down to look at a confluence or a workaround for the issue. Again, on the operational side, a big part of that I try and push onto my clients is to write articles whenever you have an issue, whenever there's something that next time someone doesn't need to spend so much time on. Write a knowledge-based article at Confluence. It takes like 5 minutes and it can save hours. But that's what Sam starts doing. Sam starts looking for a workaround, and according to my speaker notes, Sam finds a workaround. So, pretty excited about that. No, the suspense. We don't have it actually mentioned up there that Sam finds a workaround, so I need to sell that. Sam found a workaround because of that knowledge-based article that was in Confluence. So going from there, we have the workaround. The issue has been mitigated for now. Sam can communicate all that jazz via Jira status page. Jira status page, just status page. And then diving in, we have our development team. And that's the team that's actually going to go on the DevOps side, and they're going to develop this fix permanently. You can't rely on these little janky workarounds forever. Sometimes they'll fix the issue immediately. But DevOps requires the ultimate changes to be made to be able to go in and fix these issues. So the dev team goes in, they add this to their Jira backlog, and lo and behold, they also link it to that Jira Service Desk ticket for traceability and visibility for all of the end users that are sitting there wondering what's going on. This has been fixed yet. Single source of truth that I like to, again, tell my clients. Keep it the status page, but also make sure to link and close out these issues, because otherwise you have 20 different places telling people different things and different statuses. So yeah, they go in, they link the ticket in the Jira software backlog to the Jira Service Desk ticket. The fix has been added to the backlog. One of my favorite topics is incident postmortem. I just talked to my team about this last week. The post-mortem process of the DevOps lifecycle, I would throw it probably between operate and continuous feedback, is going to be one of the most important when it comes to incident management and resolution. The reason I say that is when a big issue comes to your company, if you just fix it and move on and that issue happens again, it can lose a lot of money, it can lose respect, it can keep your clients from trusting your team to do their job properly. When in reality, setting up a quick incident post-mortem with all of those involved can save a lot of time. It allows you to all sit in a room. As Mike was saying, it's not a process of pointing fingers or assigning any sort of blame. It's more to go in, come out with obtainable action items to be able to improve in the future. And it lines up with Agile. It's meant to be very quick and painless. But these teams get together, everybody involved with this issue gets into the same room, they run an instant post-mortem. My speaker notes don't indicate whether they come out with any great action items. I would assume they would, because this is the Atlassian way, and we like to come out with a lot of good things from our postmortems. We also have a website, not mentioned here at all, but one of our pages we actually link to the way Atlassian does postmortems, and it's pretty verbose, and I would recommend going to look at it if you want to dive deeper into how that works on our end. Outside of that, development begins. Our developer goes in, they've got this fix that they want to run through with their backlog. They start working on it. The issue's already been mitigated for the time being, so the users are happy. Yeah, the development team starts running through, creating the code, pushing the code, testing it. And again, as we talked about with the processes, we're talking about quick, simple fixes and iterations that are easily digestible by the teams that are going to go in and be reviewing this code. So, like we said, those columns, you're going to be working on them in sync with each other to develop these best practices, so to speak, with DevOps. Those animations are so slow. And then at the end of it all, you have the release manager. This was actually my other job at my last company, which was releasing the code and the fixes. But it's time to deploy. The fix has been done. Our team in space has mitigated the issue. They've come through the issue and they've actually fixed it long term, and it's time to be released and pushed out in Jira. So once things are ready, once the team has reviewed the code, again, the quick, simple iteration, this release manager pushes it. I test it, it looks good, and the fix is now live in production. I wanted to end on this slide specifically just to highlight, we just ran through this loop with this example. We hit on every single point, and that was not a real-world example, but totally a real-world example. I'm sure a lot of you have run into the exact same kind of issue in the past. And when you run through it like this, when you plan, you build, you get that continuous integration flowing, you deploy, you get your operations in place, and you take the continuous feedback to start you over, your DevOps system is going to be successful. And we've been running with DevOps at Atlassian and outside of Atlassian for a long time, so we can say with confidence that this system works. That's all I have for you guys.
We'll have a little bit of time for some quick questions, and then we're going to break out into some discussion groups. So any immediate questions that come to mind based on some of the slides and topics you just heard about?
I can see how helpful this is in a large company, but in teams that are like less than 10, less than 5, how useful is going to service desk and pushing that to Confluence and that all around this circle, rather than just communicating that in the team itself.
Yeah, so when you say small organizations, teams of 10, are you talking like everyone within the organization is 10, there's 10 developers, or?
Yeah.
Okay. I would say at the core, the principles are there, right? You want to identify, based on best practices, the scale of the implementation that's going to best suit your needs, right? So you might take the best practice and look at, well, how are we doing this within the tools that is scalable based on our capacity as a team? And so, the rigor that you put into implementing things like postmortems, maybe you just don't have the capacity to do that effectively as a 10-person team, but you take the best bits of it and you scale it to your size.
Outside of scaling, also setting up these best practices and the way your company is doing business with these practices early is never a bad thing. Because as the company grows, these best practices, these cultural changes, they're already going to be instilled within a 5-10-person team. So when more people are onboarded, it's already set in stone. It's not something that has to be changed in the middle of anything. So
And we are actually going to take a break now so that we can consume food and beverages while we dive into discussion. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up 3 different discussion areas, just kind of loosely defined, to dive more into the 3 pillars we talked about in the presentation. So we're going to set up a section here to talk about culture. So if you're interested in culture or playbook or have questions specific to that aspect of the presentation, grab some food, grab a drink, head on over to this corner of the room. In the back there, we're going to talk about practices. So if you have questions around Agile or Git or CI/CD, we're going to congregate in the back. We're going to talk a little bit about practices. And if you have questions about the tools themselves, we're going to talk more about specific tools available from Atlassian. We're going to congregate over by that great couch over there. We're going to use a facilitation method called Lean Coffee, which is one that you might be familiar with. Essentially, we are going to spend a couple of minutes together with some sticky notes. We're going to write down questions or topics that we would like to discuss. We're going to put these on a Kanban board, and then we're each going to get a certain number of votes based on where you're sitting. 2 votes per person. You're just going to dot on the topics that you'd like to hear about. We're going to rank them in the leftmost Kanban, the to-do, from highest ranked to lowest ranked, and we're going to time box conversations on these topics, 5 minutes apiece. At the end of the time box, we'll move it to the done column, or if we want to continue talking about it, we'll do a quick show of hands to continue on it. Each of us is going to facilitate one of the tables, but go ahead, think about what you want to talk about. Don't feel locked into a particular choice. You'll be able to roam around if you want to visit each of the stations. But go ahead, grab some food, grab a drink, and have a seat. We'll get started shortly.